Joining us now, John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. Morning, John. Thanks for coming on.
Morning, Gerard. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, sir. So we wanted to get you on to give us a rundown. I know we spoke about a month ago down at the Ace Bolt Screw grand opening there down in Florence. So what's happening in the manufacturing sector? I'm paying attention to the macro economy and some things going on there. Starting to hear some buzz about potential layoffs, really across a broad spectrum of sectors. Haven't heard so much from manufacturing. Tell us what's happening in Mississippi.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I'll kind of start by looking at that macro perspective. The JOLTS report, which is about the labor market in general,
Yep.
the number of folks hired and laid off. Just in July, we had 834,000 job openings in manufacturing across the country.
Wow. Wow.
And of those positions, we had 444,000 that were actually hired into those positions. Unfortunately, we had 437,000 separations.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a net of about 7,000 folks into the sector. So that just points out that it's a robust labor market, but we still have a long way to go to fill those needed positions, and that boils down to training and just having people willing to come to work.
Yeah. So I wonder if any of this is tracked, John. How many people apply but are just declined with respect to an offer because they don't qualify?
Yeah, that's a good question. And to my knowledge, there's no real good source of that data. And so I kind of rely on just conversations with my members and what I'm hearing out in the field. And just to kind of put a finer point on it, was with a company the other day, and they had 10 folks come in that had made it through the screening process and were in an orientation program.
Okay.
And 4 returned after lunch.
Oh, my gosh.
And so that gives you an idea of how far we have to go to find folks literally willing to work. I mean, most manufacturers have robust training programs. Even if you don't have the skills immediately, they're ready to get you in and trained up and willing to make that investment. But, the basics they need are folks willing to show up ready to work. And that's really hard to find right now.
Well, that's a great point because, as you know, John, working in the manufacturing sector, heck, any sector nowadays, nobody shows up with all the tools and all the skills to do any job virtually nowadays, which is a good thing because I think it demonstrates just how specialized and how sophisticated has our economy become. But as a result, companies have responded and met the need and said, okay, we're going to have to figure out a way to get these folks ready to do the work. And so they've created all these programs. Sometimes, as was the case on my visit up to the Community EMCC a few weeks ago, it's a joint effort between the academic world and the private sector. But the bottom line is the private sector has responded. There's not a company out there that doesn't have a very structured, robust program to get people ready. And they're willing to make that investment, but you got to show up.
That's right. And you make a great point is it's not just industry willing to make the investment, as you know, and the leadership that you have on your show and all those discussions. The state of Mississippi has put money into this effort. The federal government has put money into this effort. And so it really is, whether it's community colleges or our university partners, even K-12, we're all really focused on this issue. It's obviously going to take time, and the great work that Accelerate Mississippi is doing, trying to get our workforce development operation really focused and coordinated, which has been lacking in the past. We're making strides, but it's one of those questions like where are the people willing to work? And you kind of touched on it. No matter what job it is, a job is work, and there's not an easy 9 to 5 out there that just lets you kick your feet up. And in manufacturing, that's especially true. I mean, whether you're on the production line or in a supervisory role, I mean, you're working in a facility that is, blowing and going most of the time 24/7, and it's work. And I get a sense, a lot of the folks out there looking for employment, are looking for work from home opportunities and some of these other things that they've become accustomed to. And unfortunately, that's just not the job market that's available right now.
Yeah. And, I think something that hopefully will turn some of this around is I'm reading reports, John, about big Wall Street firms are saying it's time to come back. And I believe next week, Labor Day, is kind of the demarcation day. I think Goldman Sachs has said, you got to come back to the office. Apple's having big-time conflict with their folks. Tim Cook says, we need you here at least 3 days. We really want you here all 5. I think they're starting to figure out, even though they report all these level productivity figures and all that kind of stuff, I don't know that I'm buying all that. Honestly, there's all kinds of ways to measure that stuff, as you know, and make it look like anything you want. But there's just something about interacting with your colleagues and your peers face-to-face. No substitute for that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that organizational culture and that team building, teamwork aspect of going into the office and that sort of thing. Obviously there are opportunities in the IT space or back office type accounting and those type things where you can really work on a hybrid model. But for the most part, it's definitely the case that things are moving back to the way they were. And I just think everybody has to adjust to that. And, that doesn't even account for all the market issues that our sector has been challenged with supply chains. And you mentioned the sort of layoff potential out there. And you're right, manufacturing has been spared. I mean, our orders are very steady and everything's looking pretty good other than the supply chain and labor issues. But I think you referenced maybe some layoffs that you had read about. And I know in the auto space, you have some auto manufacturers looking to scale back some of their traditional manufacturing and back office support and moving toward the electrification and the EVs and that sort of thing. So again, it's a real positive landscape out there for industry, but there's just some challenges that we're going to have to work on.
Yeah. Thinking about new economic development projects, John, there was a time when the way you won those was to offer the most attractive financial incentives, usually in the form of some sort of tax concessions and abatements. That doesn't even come up in the discussion anymore, the best I can tell in my involvement in Madison County. What's your experience?
No, you're absolutely right. Where those incentives, they would have been your top 1 or 2 discussion items. That's way down the list now. It is almost exclusively about availability of labor and the labor shed around a potential site. It's all focused on how do you get your human capital there to make you successful.
No doubt. Next on the list would be basic infrastructure assets, power, transportation, et cetera. But a distant second on that, way top, I mean, the box checking yes or no decision maker is, can we get the labor? With respect to any kind of tax abatements or concessions, just way down the list. I mean, it doesn't matter if you can't get people to come to work to do the jobs.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. And as you know, we've been really active on the infrastructure front, whether it's the Emergency Road and Bridge program that's been very successful over the past few years, putting money into emergency road and bridge situations, especially at the local level where they don't have the resources. And you're seeing a very similar situation play out in the city of Jackson, where you have decades of neglect and mismanagement, but it's such a critical piece of the infrastructure that we're going to have to figure out a way collectively to address that situation. And we can obviously point fingers, whether it's a road, a bridge, a water system. Residents and businesses absolutely require these to be not only in working condition, but really in top-notch condition.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, let's hope we get this situation solved, certainly in the city of Jackson. Real quick, just got a couple of seconds. Do you have any members there that are suffering as a result of the water problems there?
Yeah, so we've been in contact. We don't have any that are in a critical situation, but obviously just taking care of staff and everything, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I understand. John, thanks for coming on. Always enjoy it. Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Gerard.
John McKay, President, CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association, has been our guest on Middays. We'll step aside. We're coming right back. Don't forget, David Blunt, Senator who represents District 29, that includes parts of Jackson, will be on at 12:00.